Welcome back, everybody, to the energy tips for week 38. That is September the 15th till the 21st of September 2019. My name is Jona Bryndis. I'm a professional energy coach and energy healer. This week, I want to talk to you about these differences, these challenges of straddling two worlds. What do I mean with this? It's obvious in these times that we are experiencing something like a split reality. We're having the experience as a 3D person with a body, with needing to pay bills, with chores, with duties. And we're also feeling something coming in from within, right? And that is always there, but often not easy for us to process, not easy for us to interpret, and especially not easy to find the words to describe it. This next coming week gives us an opportunity to decode this a little more, to become a little more aware of what it actually is that is happening within us, and also perhaps gives us clues about how we can approach this process. The overall energy right now is something like a back and forth. All right, so in the energy forecast for September, I talked about how we are looking at sort of different ways of finding without seeking. Okay, and next week's theme is finding focus, finding, the right way of looking at things, not the way that, puts us into further schisms, into further inner dualities, but the way that allows us to unify this brain of ours, the mind and the heart coming in simultaneously. So your perception next week will increase, and this will bring in a bunch of problems. If you've watched the energy update already, then you got the gist. So we have this overall theme here of schism and duality, and it's a lot more mental this week than it was in the summer months. So you'll still have, this heaviness and the emotional confusion that comes with it, but you will be much more caught in your own thinkingness, in your own judgment, in your own thought processes. And this is why I almost called this energy tips the snake eating its tail. This is really what is going on. This is literally what it looks like, this back and forth. There's something happening here that we cannot actually interpret correctly if we don't understand that we are trying to eat our own tail in the process. So the short version of what I'm trying to express here is the ego cannot transcend itself. And the way this reflects here in our collective next week will be with more back and forth, more weirdo, erratic type of things coming from our politicians. The financial system still holding on to their old powers. And in the midst of all of this, we'll experience nature events, things such as disasters or hurricanes or earthquakes, floods, storms, and so forth. All to show us that besides all this human ego that is playing out here in this world, that there is a higher power. And this higher power has a wonderful, or in its harshness, in its devastation, brings in a wonderful realization, namely that it can unite us all. So if we can pull into this awareness, all right, that we are here, yes, and we are here voluntarily, but there's also something that orchestrates it all that is much bigger than us, that is much bigger than our own ego. And in this realization, we can find the courage and we can find the power to move towards what it is that our karmic purpose is, or what our true heart's desire is. And just for those of you who've worked here with conscious manifestation in this next week, your true heart's desire is also linked to your karmic purpose. So your soul purpose is not like people think, sort of this rainbow, you know, and you all your life you try to find, you know, your elation through bliss or through, you know, this sort of chasing rainbows attitude. This is not what your soul purpose is. In most of our cases, our soul purpose is actually the same as our karmic purpose, and that has to do with letting go of something, that has to do with undoing and with redeeming. All right, so the interpretation of that which you're seeking is what's in your way. It is not what you're feeling from within the prompting. The prompting itself is neutral, is always correct. There is no good or bad. There are no good or bad circumstances. But your way of seeing it and your way of framing it is what you need to review, refine. And this is what this higher perception can do for us. Being able to link into divine Wi-Fi gives us a new perspective, an augmented perspective. But as I've already mentioned in the energy update, there's certain challenges that come with that, and that has to do with our physical and our emotional as well. The physical has to be able to sustain this higher processing speed, if you will, and the emotional has to be able to catch up with it. We have to learn which of our emotions are actually ours and which are the ones that we absorb from other people. We have to learn how to know what is, you know, there for us to get past and to feel through and to heal, and what is there for us to let go. All right, so processing emotions is not always what you think it is. Some of us have already experienced this. We can get caught in processing our emotions all our life, and really all that is a form of specialness, because we're not actually seeing that the constant repeat is nothing but, you know, our specialness, our hanging on to these emotions as something special or particularly bad or particularly whatever. So the idea here of moving past our attachments and moving past what the ego interprets can be seen very, very simply. The lesson for next week is really to go into this common sense place. Okay, if you guys experience repeat after repeat, then there's something you didn't learn in the past. Okay, this is like repeating a grade. So that means it is not what it is that you're trying that could actually help you to get past it. You need to try something new. And for many of you, this trying something new is actually letting go. Some things are simply the way they are. There's nothing there for you to control. All right, and there's nothing there for you that you need to judge either. It just is an experience. And if you come in with a lot of past life stuff, with a lot of karmic stuff, it doesn't mean anything. All this means is that, you know, you have a very clear karmic purpose here, and every experience, every relationship serves this purpose. Until you really connect with it and see that you have a lot more options than you saw before. And, you know, I've mentioned this before, there's always a third option. What I mean with this is, you know, when we get caught in our duality, in our ego, it's always accompanied with this view of either black or white, good or bad, light or dark. And when you find yourself in that place, then you know that you are in your ego. The third option is at least the option of neutrality. That's the option where you see things just the way they are. This links you into truth, this links you into your higher perception, and it allows you to move past it. There are, of course, as soon as you tap into this third option, a lot more options, but you couldn't see them before because you were too focused on whether it's right or wrong, or whether you're good enough or not. Things like this, all right? So this is what I mean when I talk about mental schisms. It is kind of like a deception of the ego to believe that you only have the options that you have, but at the same time, you can't judge yourself for not seeing the other options, because in this schism, you cannot see them, so you have to literally make a leap of faith, you know, and understand that Whenever I'm in this place, then there's something I'm not seeing, and I need to trust in that I cannot see. All right, I know this is hard, guys. So it's not very easy to express those things, because how could we know the things that we don't know? I get this. So this is why we do so many workshops with you and all these energy training and healing sessions, because this is a process of unraveling. This is not an event. All right. How will this translate in your chakras here this next week? We continually, we'll still have the first and seventh chakra aspect here that I described for this week, the heavy astral field, sort of triggering our karmic, our soul purpose things, and they're showing it to us in our personal lives through some of our physicality, the denser 3D levels of our existence. In your feet, in your legs. I said last week, this week, you're going to feel it more in your knees, in your bones, all over. A lot of issues with bones will come up for you this week. And your joints, people who have arthritis will feel this flare up. These heavy, heavy energies are really showing you the density of your 3D body. Okay, what can you do? Anything that you have already found out that makes you feel lighter, that makes it able for you to tune into your body more. This arthritis pain or bone pain, all right, often comes from resistance, and resistance comes from rigidity, and rigidity comes from a lack of flexibility, from a lack of transformability or adaptability. So on a physical level, stretching, of course, and anything that allows you to slowly expand, this how your bones are being sort of connected will help you. In the energy update, I also mentioned that this physical part here, there are some things that you can do, but you have to allocate the time and the space, preferably on a daily level. Remember, daily routines, where you actually investigate this, where you actually work with it, where you actually feel your energy body. The new aspect here that is coming in for this next week is the sixth chakra, that is our third eye, that is now being activated here for this next week, meaning that on top of all this astral stuff, we are now opening up our ability to see through this. Okay, so this is actually, again, once more, an upgrade to what it was before, but also at the same time with the problem of our ego tapping in more. Okay, so what was all about us tuning into our heart is now becoming a little more complicated, because our ego is being triggered more now. So this contextualization and this reframing is therefore so important, because when we get caught in this chasing rainbow idealism, so to speak, when we want to just have like blissful experiences and we have them, okay, then our ego immediately tries to take credits for it. And when this then wanes, okay, what happens is that we feel like we are losers, or something, what's wrong with us, are we not good enough, and so forth. So the solution here is to not take credits for either or. If you don't judge what you're experiencing, then the ego isn't involved. So it's all about letting go of this inner judgment, and instead learning how to be really, really honest with ourselves in an allowing and forgiving and compassionate way. Emotionally, I'm expecting you guys to get involved in a lot of distractions, dramas, other people dramas, but overall it will feel like just overwhelming, okay? And here I just want to ask you a simple question, guys, that we often forget to ask ourselves. Is it that we associate drama with aliveness? ask yourself if this is actually deep down making you feel alive. This bifurcation that I mentioned emotionally plays out as these ego paradigms, avoiding pain and seeking pleasure. And for some of us, especially those of us who've experienced a lot of trauma in our lives, avoiding pain and seeking pleasure is kind of mixed up. And we are basically conditioned to feel, and don't get me wrong here, but to feel a sense of pleasure in pain. This is a very difficult subconscious sort of programming to overcome. You have to understand that many of us needed to find ways to cope with trauma, and that one of the ways was to actually, in that drama that occurs through the pain that we are experiencing, or the fear of the pain, that we feel somewhat alive, somewhat familiar with it, and therefore sort of latch onto it, willingly latch onto it. So many of us, embrace drama and overwhelm as a means to distract ourselves from what it actually is that this event or this circumstance is wanting to tell us. All right, so emotionally, this duality can link us into, avoiding pain or seeking pleasure, and the mix-up of the two. All right, mentally, the looping that I've described earlier can be counteracted by, first of all, learning how to put words to what we're experiencing, journaling and describing this. So this lexicon of sensations that I talked about, your spiritual, emotional, mental literacy. Okay, so to work on, allowing yourself to describe this in your own way. This is all about how you subjectively experience it. Okay, so accept that you are more than just your thoughts and your body and your emotions, okay? And know that you don't have that language yet, and the way your soul speaks to you is hardly, you can't actually translate that into words. So your job here as this soul traveler or true self, is to decode this language of your soul and bring this in and translate this into your 3D language so that you can connect with this better and also communicate this better. Okay, so a lot of next week will be about reframing, guys. And one exercise that I want to share with you that we did with the Heart Warriors here is to, it's an NLP technique really, but it's very simple but super effective in that way, to find positive ways to describe things, especially when you work on, your goals and your strategy. Don't set goals that start with "I no longer want to," or I don't want to overeat, or I want to. Try to find positive ways to describe it, what it actually is that you want, not what you don't want anymore. Describe what it actually is that you want. For a conscious manifestor, it's very, very important to see how the focus on what you want is actually the conscious part. The unconscious part is all the stuff that you don't want anymore. So when you do your order form, when you send out your true heart's desire into this universe, you're going to have to energize what you want and not what you don't want anymore. Okay, if you would like to do the same exercise that we're doing with the Heart Warriors here right now, then please email me and I'll send you the order form, because there's a specific way of structuring it that leads you to your true heart's desire. Socially, this need to show up for our inner connection more will play out in your relationships as it always does, but this week is going to be really clear to you. It's going to, how this is all mirroring it back to you. And again here, the best way to improve your inner relationship, your inner connection, is to simultaneously work on your outer connections, or vice versa. It always goes both ways. So this week's theme in our relationships is really about total honesty, speaking from the heart, and self-responsibility instead of judgment or self-judgment, okay? You just got to accept that your ego really isn't in control. If you can do that, then, and you can even say it. You can say, if I look at it from my ego's point of view, it looks like that. But if I look at it from my heart's point of view, it looks like that. And this way, you're naming the schism, and it can no longer dominate you, okay? This is a little trick to deal with our inner duality. Spiritually, this snake eating its own tail has, of course, a larger sort of mystical or mythological meaning, but it is the beginning and the end, the alpha and the omega. And when we translate this sort of in this sort of divine language, then what this means is that creation is a continual, circle of life. It is a continual circle of growing and building and, dying and getting rebirth. And we need to understand that these cycles, they happen on the macro level as well as on the micro level. So accept that within yourself, that you have these, sort of deaths of your own ego continually going on. This goes on every day. It's like a continual reset. Don't end up in this sort of entrapped situation where you're actually trying to eat your own tail. That is your ego trying to find sense in what is going on, okay? So what is truly going on here, in this divine universe, can only be understood with your heart, not your emotions, with your heart, your higher perception, okay? And then energetically, of course, this means that you, not just you, all of us here as humans, going through this transition, that we need to learn to discern better. We need to learn how to discern truth for once. And this is one of the cool things about your energetic sensitivity, that it actually allows you to do this. But the way we learn this is by really feeling into what, how our energy body responds to certain things. And in energy language, we call this contractive or expansive. So translated here into manifestation, it means what moves me forward and what moves me backward, or what leads me to stagnation. You see, there is a wisdom that is residing within yourself, within your heart's ability, to tap into divine wisdom. And if you do that, then you will find real truth, true truth, if you will. All right? But you've got to allow this sense to be trained, to be experienced, okay? So the other side of this, of course, is, all this collective insanity going on, and most people being completely unaware of what we're talking about. And so, with 90% of that going on out there, we're going to have to learn to protect ourselves a little bit, because we are also a bit vulnerable here when we go into this higher perception. This is why we have put the etheric protection intensive on the schedule for you hard warriors here. And this is why we, called the hard warrior program actually to begin with, because it's this oxymoron between learning how to live and be in your heart, and simultaneously understanding that the world that you are existing in is not quite ready yet for this kind of awareness. So we have to be a bit of a warrior of a heart, but without fighting against the world, but understanding that once we learn how to work this better, how to live this better, that, the connection with others is actually what can move us forward. So, guys, enjoy this next week. Cave in maybe a little bit for the full moon on Saturday. Especially if you're female, this is often quite a tricky time. I would not go partying in those times, because there's a lot of astral, sort of gunk floating around. Your dreams and your visions and so forth, they'll be intense enough. All right, so what is the best medicine? love. All right, tune into the things and the people and nature and all the things that make you connect with your inner love and enjoy it. Okay. Get through this, all right. See this as an opportunity, and I talk to you next week. Bye bye.